From Glitch HQ on Riverside Avenue in spooky, sporty Minneapolis, this is Nice Games Club, the show where nice game devs talk gaming and game development.
I'm Martha McGarry, and I make nice games.
I'm Steve McGregor, and I make nice games.
And I'm Martha Croy. I too make nice games. For this week's episode, our topics are designing horror games and designing sports games. Who approved these topics? And so, if everyone's ready, let's start.
Yes, this is our themed episode.
It's a very strange theme because I think all of us on the show hate horror games and don't play sports games. So what are we doing?
we thought we'd really get into it from a trio of non-experts.
Yes.
Non-enthusiasts.
Looking forward to your criticism.
Well, we did an episode like this a long time ago.
Yeah,
in the first couple months of our show. It's called Try It Once. You can go back and listen to that, where we each talk about something that we're not into, that the others have a little bit of context for. So that's sort of what we're doing here. But in this case, there's no one to correct any of us.
Right. So it's,
I mean, I kind of like sports games.
Okay.
I can't say that about horror games.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm curious to see what comes out of this discussion.
Well, yeah, and I mean, not just that, but like I respect horror games and I respect what they do, and it's an avenue of games that are not just fun, like quote unquote fun. So I respect that aspect.
Right. It's leaning into another. Yeah, we'll get into all that.
Yes.
But first, we want to talk about some games we played recently because we've all piled up a short list that we wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go first because this is kind of fun. I've complained on the show before how I don't play enough games, and I think that's a pretty common game developer complaint.
Yeah.
But I have a sort of a guilt about it, and especially a lot of indie games that I want to play that I've been meaning to play, I never get around to, and then once it's 2 years old, I'm like, I'm free of the. No one's gonna make me play it anymore. No one's gonna give me side-eyed because it's back in memory, so I'm free of it.
Yeah.
So I want to do that less and less. And what motivated me to play a bunch of these games recently was it was Father's Day a couple weeks ago.
Right, yeah.
And I'm a godfather to one of my nephews. And my sister likes to have them purchase little gifts for their parents on those holidays. So that's very sweet. And so the whole family gets together, all the fathers, and we do a little thing, but I get a little thing from that, which is nice because I'm not a father. So like, it feels like I'm cheating a little bit. But so my sister was like, they're old enough now, they're just going to pick their own thing. So you're going to get whatever they pick. I'm sorry. And she found that kind of funny. So my nephew, who I've been playtesting Widget Satchel with, and I showed him Zelda when that came out on the Switch, and now he has his very own. He got me a couple of Nintendo eShop gift cards. And so I'm like, this is fantastic. And so I bought a bunch of cheap indie games, and it was a great motivation for me to finally sit down and play some of these. Yeah. Which isn't to say I didn't have that amount of money before. It's just like I was being forced to, and that was exactly what I needed. So a couple of these I played. First one is a game called Typewriter. It's like the typewriter, like click clack, but it's two words, Typewriter, and it's a game that was funded by the French government. And part of a museum exhibition kind of showcase expo sort of thing.
Okay.
I don't have all the details on that, but it's basically a platformer, relatively short.
Okay.
And you play through the history of typography. So this game was made for me.
Yeah, it's like, should be called Type Mark something. I don't know. Mark's game.
So it's very cheap on Switch. It was a mobile game originally, and then I think it was only recently ported. Not super recently, but so in the game you play as a colon, and you can tell that it is a French game because you play as a colon, and that like no one questioned that.
Yeah, right.
But you're just two dots, and the gameplay is not awesome, right? But it's not bad. It's kind of fun. And because you're this sort of oblong character, you can bounce off walls, but you also rotate freely based on the physics. So if there's very frequently you can accidentally jump backwards. So there's like a little precision to it that can be kind of very frustrating, in fact. But so it's not just so there's some skill to it, and the levels are designed for you to like hook on the edge of anyway, it's very strange because it has nothing to do with the actual content of the game, which is this gorgeous, like each sort of world is you see lots of art about about written language from prehistoric ages all the way through past Helvetica into dot matrix printers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's even a secret level about Comic Sans. So that's a bit of not so much of a spoiler because you need to go look for that. And the actual level itself is amazing. It's only precision platform. It's not a hard game, but that bonus level is hard. Anyway, it's very fun in the sense that you collect letters of the alphabet in each of the eras, but you also collect 6 or 7 asterisks through the level, and sometimes you have to look for them. And then each of those contain their lore elements. They contain a couple of pages each of history of that era of typography. So you learn about the Gutenberg Bible, you learn about like Gothic script, you learn about the Bauhaus movement, you learn about Helvetica, the international style, like all this stuff that I know a lot about, but I didn't know exactly the biography of Didot. Like, I didn't know a lot of that stuff. So it's a really fascinating read. And so it is sort of like alternate game and Wikipedia. And so it's bizarre. No one would publish this game. No one would put a lot of money into making it because it is this weird balance between those things. But the fact that it was, it's sort of a public art project. And I think we need more of these things. We need more of this kind of like so that this stuff can be explored more, like these concepts can be explored more, and so that they can be better versions of themselves, because this thing has a lot of faults as a game and as an educational resource. It has some issues on both sides, and they don't always meld together. Sometimes they do quite well. And certainly the game's art style does a lot of it's very evocative of the elements it's teaching you. So it's sort of this wonderful window into this world, which is really, really cool. But the more of these types of things we can get, funded by governments, funded by museums, funded by nonprofits and charitable organizations, the more that this style of play can innovate. And so it was really exciting to play, and I'm glad it's on Switch, and it's really, really cheap. So I totally recommend picking it up because it won't take you long to play. And if you don't want to read the content, it'll go even faster. But that's what you should do it for. Totally recommend. Another game is Rime. This came out a little while ago.
A platformer?
Yeah, it's a 3D platformer.
Okay.
And it
/ puzzle.
Yes.
Sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
So there's like few, if any, enemies. The controls are relatively simple. It's it's open world in a sense. But the way you play through it is roughly from one chapter to the next. It is an incredible art style. And once you find out what it's really about, it has a great narrative hook and a couple of really good twists. Platforming is but the game might be a little longer than it has to be. But it's definitely a fun play. It looks amazing, and the ending is solid. Like it really, really ends strongly.
Oh, okay. I love that when video games end strongly.
Yeah, Martha, you played a bit of this, right?
Yeah, I've been going through my backlogs, and this game was in it, and I got farther than the demo got at GDC one year when we saw it. But
oh, that's right. That's when it was announced. Was at the Double Fine presentation, right?
Yeah. So I got to the part. Well, I got farther along to a part that was scary, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Also, for some reason on my screen, I know there's a part. Well, this is all spoilers, so I shouldn't say anything. It's a good game.
I know it's one of those games that I really want to just talk about, but you can't really unless someone's played it.
Please don't, because now I'm interested.
Yeah. So if you trust us, play this game, and then talk to us on Twitter about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other one was Gris.
Gris. Oh man, that game looked gorgeous.
Yeah, GRIS. Not everyone knows how to pronounce it. I had to look it up to be sure.
I would have said Gris.
Yeah. Well, it's the French word for gray. Which can be pronounced gris. But also grease, like oil.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's how the developers pronounce it. It is lovingly hand animated, incredible, very linear game. I liked and didn't like this game. One, if you play Rime and Gris, there's a similarity there that again it's spoilery. But there's some weird connections in the narrative. But also, it looks amazing. It has a bunch of really cool ideas. And when you go through a world, you get a new platforming ability. But it is an incredibly easy game. Everything is utterly linear. You know exactly what to do next. And the few times where it does give you some options, and there's some puzzles, but all the puzzles are very straightforward. And that's okay sometimes. Sometimes it's just nice to put a jigsaw puzzle together. You know what I mean? just, find a thing, put it here. Like it not really taxes you mentally that much. It just takes some time and it's kind of enjoyable. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of the case here, but it is in between each section is these long stretches of walking, which is great because the art is incredible. And I think this is not something that you haven't heard before if you've heard of this game.
Yeah.
It's an amazing looking game. But I think as an experience, I think it could have had more content in between those areas, or it could have been a tighter experience.
Yeah.
And I think the idea behind these long stretches is to be a relaxed, slow. I think it's on purpose.
Sure, yeah.
I don't think it's a mistake necessarily. I think this is their design.
Yeah.
I just didn't really. I got bored a lot in a way that frustrated me because this is a game that I didn't want to be bored by.
Yeah.
Because every time there was something to do, I was like, okay, great, this is cool. I'm getting the next little step of it. And then it would be like, okay, now relax. It's time to sort of slowly walk to the next thing. And then I keep walking. And I'm ready for the next part of the story. And I feel like the narrative structure of the mechanics are working on me. And then they immediately just stop working. And then it becomes a slog. And that was very, very frustrating. Yeah. And then it made me kind of more like cynical about the next sort of like gorgeous pan out moment of like scene setting. So I had a difficult time with it.
Sure.
But really, I mean, I'd still recommend gorgeous game. But yeah, and it's gotten some puzzles, but it's not a challenge. It's something you can just get through in an evening, and sort of experience it. I guess I had different expectations, and that might have been kind of what soured it a little bit for me.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. And the last one is one I haven't gotten to yet, but is one I bought with these gift cards. Is a game called The Gardens Between.
What is that? Is that the time game?
Yes, it's a game where you have these little panoramas, little showpieces, and you can move time backwards and forwards and manipulate objects. And then there are characters that walk through it, but you don't control the characters. I mention it just because I'm really excited to play it.
Okay.
It seems really, really cool, and it's gotten a lot of really good buzz. So,
cool.
But I have nothing more to say about it. Have either of you played that game?
No, I have been meaning to. But.
Yeah. Well, I'll report back once I get around to it.
Cool.
I've been playing a lot of read-only memories, 2064 read-only memories, and it's
that's the number.
Yes, that's the year. That the game is set in, and it's very good, very good.
Yeah,
dark but very good. The voice acting is really good in it, and I love that the whole game you play as if you're like holding some sort of handheld pixel art piece of technology, and it's really cool. Like the whole theming of everything fits together with what's happening in the game, and all the characters are really interesting and diverse, and it's really cool.
I was my brother was playing that game, and I was watching him play a little bit of it, and it looked really cool.
I played this at IndieCade, I think, before it came out as a demo. And I had a difficult time with it because it was just getting through dialogue boxes. It was not the right setting for it. So I always felt like I didn't give it the chance. I didn't really understand what it was. And I was like, all right, I got to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
I guess I'll come back to this another time.
It's one of those sit down and play it by yourself sort of games. Mm-hmm. Not like I can see why didn't get.
Yeah.
I can see why it didn't work in a setting where you had only a limited time to play it and a bunch of people around you.
So like, is there anything you can tell about the story or like, because it's the style, the art style is pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, the story starts out, you wake up and there's this little robot in your room and you're in. And the robot's like, hi, your friend built me and now he's missing and you have to help me find him.
That's a good little narrative hook. I like it.
Yeah. So you follow Turing around and
named Turing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute.
It's adorable. So it's all about artificial intelligence, and they are kind of like one of the only few intelligent robots in the game, but robots are like, they call them ROMs in the game, and they're everywhere doing all sorts of jobs like cleaning the park. Early on in the game, there's this little park robot who has a water fountain, and his only job is to hand out water to people in the park, which is great. He's very adorable. But yeah, I've been so obsessed with it. It's really fun.
Yeah.
I played till 3 a.m. last night.
Nice.
I also played Donut County. I hadn't gotten around to playing that. And oh my God, that game is so funny.
Yeah.
And a lot of fun. Like, it's very easy, but it's very Katamari. Like, it's super fun.
So Katamari is famously frustratingly difficult.
Oh.
In a certain way, because the controls are kind of hard to master.
Weird,
Oh yeah, it's like relaxing. Then
okay, so this is like
Katamari.
Okay, I like it.
Plus, you get to destroy everything basically, and there's raccoons.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
So otherwise, exactly like Katamari.
Yeah.
Cool. I've been playing Slay the Spire. It's not like that new of a game, but it's out on Switch.
Yeah.
I was looking for stuff to do because I finally finished all the Picross levels. I finished a lot of them while I was in E3.
Yeah.
And so again, I've been playing Slay the Spire. It's really cool. It's basically, it's kind of like a roguelike, but you play with it's like a turn-based roguelike. You play with a bunch of cards in your hand and you use those as your actions. And so like it has deck building mechanics in it and stuff. And so it's really interesting because like I really love the building and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All deck building stuff. It's great. I don't think it's actually that hard, but that's maybe because I'm bad at it. It makes it feel like it's much harder than it is. So we'll see how I do in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I played Katana Zero, which I played this before I played the Spire. It's a relatively short game, but it's not really a great game to play on the bus because there's a lot of narrative and stuff. Uh-huh. I didn't expect that.
Oh, you're not like a read in the car kind of person? Does it work for you? Or?
Oh no, I was reading and I was paying attention to the cutscenes and stuff, but just like my bus ride is only like 20 minutes long.
Oh, so it wasn't like gameplay.
Yeah, I would play. Well, I would play it and then like I would be like, oh shoot, the bus, I have to stop. And this isn't really a great place to stop. I'll just do it, I guess. And so I felt like I did that a lot. So I don't think I got hooked on the narrative as much as I should have or could have if I had just played it straight through or something.
So you had a similar problem that I had when I demoed Read Only Members.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like I paid for the game, so
so you had to stick with it.
Yeah. So I mean I beat it and it's like it's fun.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think I got into it as much as I probably should have.
Okay.
Well, that's that.
Ooh. It's haunted.
Guys, what is happening right now?
Woo! Scary.
This is the extent of this is what horror means to us.
Jump scare.
Horror games. Yes, that is what we're talking about today because I made a horror game.
What?
I did. My company sometimes will have like a week where we work on we do like a game jam.
And we work like an internal jam, right?
Yeah. And so I was working with Lizzie, who's one of my good friends, and Sydney, who was also one of my good friends at work. And they are both really into horror things.
No.
And I am not. But I was like, yeah, okay.
You have the wherewithal to stop them.
Yep. So I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And it was hard because I got to a point where I didn't want to play the game I was working on because it was too scary for me.
Uh-huh.
So here I am just talking about how to design games that you won't want to play because they're too scary for you.
Is that should, I mean, the threshold on that's probably pretty low for you.
Oh yeah, it's really low.
But like, is that the goal of a horror game designer?
Maybe. I can't say that I
like. It's a success when I'm too scared to play it.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a certain aspect of it where like everything that's happening, so it's not scary.
Yeah.
And you've spent the last like 30 hours making this scary monster walk the 3 feet forward that it needs to.
Right, yeah. And you're like, what the heck? It's just silly at that point. But, yeah, I don't know. I was still spooked by my own game. And it's weird because I hate being scared. I hate it so much.
Yeah.
But I still did it anyways. Because I figured it'd be a new experience and I could learn from it. So I mean I did.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a bunch of different types of horror games or horror things really. And I'm not going to go into detail on all of them, but there's a few types that I guess I wanted to bring up. Like there's psychological horror, things that make you question reality.
Yeah.
Things like that. Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem is famous for like its metagame horror stuff that they did, where like if you think that like your game save was deleted and stuff like that while you were playing it, or like your console had blue screened or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I don't know that the GameCube could blue screen.
Well, I think that it was, generally when you plugged into a TV and you didn't have an input going into it, it would be a blue screen with a little green input 1 or something.
Yeah.
And for a time, most TVs looked roughly like that.
Yeah.
So that was a good trick to play.
Yeah.
Wouldn't work anymore because every TV looks different now and when that you wouldn't be fooled by it.
Yeah. There's never really been a game like that aside from this. Well, there's been some that have like tooled around with the idea of the game is manipulating your computer or something. But
yeah, I mean, there's Doki Doki Literature Club or whatever. That's
is that what that?
That's
that
like
works?
You have to go in and
like you have to edit your save
files, and the game files itself and stuff like that.
Oh.
And then that game we played,
One Shot,
that reaches in and finds the name of your user or whatever and other things on your computer.
Yeah,
that's kind of creepy.
Yeah,
that one was a cool one. There are action horror games, which are basically action games, but they have horror elements. Resident Evil.
They just have zombies.
Horror.
They also have zombies.
Those elements.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, those are just action games. That's just how they seem to me.
They're. I mean, I haven't played them, so I don't know. But I think that like they are. They have like horror. The way that it can work is like it can take some of your power away. The way action games normally work is you're very powerful and you can wreck face and destroy things, and that's great. But because it's a horror game, like they can take that power away from you, and they will do that sometimes to make you feel scared.
Okay.
And so I think that's the twist on it.
Oh, so that's how it works with those action mechanics.
Yes,
I see.
I think that's how like Resident Evil 4, like you have powerful guns and stuff, but you had limited ammo. That's how all Resident Evil work.
Sure.
And so like you can kill stuff, but if you run out of things to kill stuff with, then you get killed.
Yeah, the math on that checks.
Right. There are atmospheric horror games like Silent Hill. Is famous for its fog. I mean, they specifically put the fog in there because like they couldn't load all of the things on PlayStation, but like it actually worked for the game. And like
that also spooky game, Superman 64.
Right. I used to play that game all the time when I was a kid. Not the single player. Single player is terrible, but like the multiplayer aspect of it was not that great either. When you don't have a lot of games, you play what you can.
Yeah.
And then there are like gory horror games like Dead Space and stuff that have like body horror and things like that.
Right.
Really nasty creatures and stuff gnawing at you, or
right.
Really disgusting stuff. Yep. A lot of things.
So Dead Space is action horror as well, and the third game was much more action,
right?
Like just sci-fi action.
Yeah.
And it got a lot of criticism from its fans. I remember that being like a big part of why that game didn't do great.
Yeah. So there's a distinction, and like fans are looking to be scared.
Yeah,
for some reason.
We're not going to figure that out today.
Nope, that's beyond my pay grade. So what kinds of things can make a good horror game good? I guess from what I've observed,
it's a mystery.
From what I've observed, and I guess what I've experimented with in the game I made.
Looking through your fingers.
Oh boy. Literally my development time was spent like that. One thing that is common in all horror things is jump scares. If you use them too much, though,
jump scare.
You use them too much, Martha. People will become desensitized to them or annoyed by them, frankly. And so, like, if you use them in the right way, it can terrify people. You need to make sure that like you build up the tension to where it makes sense, but like in a way that players are not expecting it. So I don't know, just think about that when you're doing your thing. One thing that is unique to horror games that is different from a lot of other games is that like there's a sense of power in most games, but like you can oftentimes are encouraged to like take that away from the player to make them feel a lot more tension, make them feel more scared of the content around them. Because like if you can't deal with the content, then it's coming after you, and you have to run away from it. And so that's something that's another thing. Actual threats, like enemies that you can't just plow through, are important in this kind of game. In the remake of Resident Evil 2, they had that Mr. X character or whatever. X gonna give it to you, where where I guess it was like invulnerable to all of your bullets and stuff, and it would just slowly, constantly come after you.
Yeah.
Actually, in the game that I made,
basically turned it into an auto scroller.
Yeah, kind of. But like you never knew when he was going to come after you and stuff. So it was a constantly plotting, slow moving thing that would every once in a while break into the room you're in while you're like looking for stuff.
Right. So you knew it was out there.
Yeah.
That's the suspense.
You knew it was out there. You knew it was searching for you, but you just didn't know when.
Right.
I mean, Alien Extinction had this same thing.
Isolation.
Yes. Yeah. Alien Isolation had this where the alien would constantly be like coming into your room and stuff, and it had like there was a whole detail on like how its AI worked, but it was constantly knowing where you were, but like not exactly knowing where you were. So it would like, sneak into your room at certain points and it would terrify you.
Right. So it gave you the impression that it was like always one step behind you.
Right. Yeah. So like it was constantly following you. Something to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
Good pacing is important here too, because you can't just be scared the entire time. Otherwise, you will either eventually not be scared, or or you'll be too scared and you just won't play the game anymore.
Yeah, there's that line that all games have in certain types of content, which is you start to see the seams a little bit.
Yeah,
and then the magic fades away.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like you can take pacing from other games as an example of this, like Uncharted. As much as I don't like those games, they have decent pacing where like you will oftentimes have a big cutscene thing and a bunch of explosions and all this stuff, and you're running from a train or whatever. And then like right after that, there'll be a nice calm scene where like the characters are discussing their next moves or whatever else.
Yeah,
when you can sit there and reflect on what you just did and take some time to build up to the next scene.
And those games do play on your sense of fear in a certain way. Tomb Raider's like this too, where as you get closer to the end, then that pacing starts to change.
Yeah,
and then it brings you out of your comfort level.
Yeah.
So these are elements that are techniques you can use not just in a horror game.
Right. Less jump scares though.
Yeah,
but yes, definitely. If another thing is like you could lightly touch on people's phobias a little bit, like common ones like claustrophobia or arachnophobia, things like that. You put a spider in your game, it automatically makes it scary for some people. So think about that. But you want to avoid causing or triggering actual trauma from people as best as you can, because like I mean, people are playing your game to enjoy your game, and they're not trying to relive any past experiences that have caused harm to them in the past. So just be considerate of that. You can like, for example, like warn the player before they start playing the game that like it has these kinds of things that can trigger you or something. So or like ways to opt out, even just like being able to pause the game is helpful, because then they can pause it and close it or leave or whatever.
Do you know of any like high profile examples where either that effort wasn't made and it actually affected people in a way that wasn't intended, or examples where the effort was made because the content was potentially so triggering? I feel like that's a conversation that we feel we have to have, and like it's important, but I don't know that there's a lot of like examples that can help us guide us when we create new content.
Sure.
But I'm just not familiar with the genre as much.
Yeah. I'm drawing a blank on that right now.
Well, listener, if you have a great example, let us know on Twitter. Because I think, and this is true for other elements of game design too, where you want to do good at this one thing, but you don't have a lot of information to help you make the right decisions. Or give you enough to make the decisions you want to make or the effect you want to have.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely a case of that.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So
feels like it anyway.
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure on the best way to do it. I know that like how like movies and TV shows will handle it is they'll let you know what kind of content will be in the thing beforehand. Yeah. And I guess like the rating systems that we have in our games do like, they have like violence and stuff, but I don't know how descriptive that would be.
There's a certain amount of like how much do you want the story to unfold and be surprising and without, and so there's what's the standards, best practices. I don't know.
Right. Well, there are common triggers for like common trauma things that people have gone through that like you can be considerate of in the meantime.
Part of me is also skeptical of anyone making a horror game having the capacity to do justice to any of those topics. But that's me being cynical.
Yeah, I can't speak to that one.
Yeah.
Last thing I guess I wanted to bring up is just think about like the player. If the player understands like all of the systems and things that are happening behind the scenes for the game, and some games do this, right? Because that's like an aspect of the game, is understanding how it works. Then they understand how it works, and there's no fear because like they know that they're safe in this moment or not safe in this moment or whatever else. So darkness or unknown information is important in these kinds of games. Making sure that the player is not is kept in the dark about like what's going on behind the scenes is important, because otherwise, the mystery is part of the fear. So those are the kinds of things I did. I went through, I guess, when I was working on my game. The game I worked on was this game where you play as a scientist whose son she is convinced is infected with some form of a disease. And she has micro sub because of course you have a micro sub and she injects it into her son's bloodstream to look for this infected cell. She discovers that there is in fact an infected cell that is like it's slowly constantly chasing after you after the sub, but you need to scan a not fully infected cell that looks exactly like all the other ones, but moves differently. It moves more unnaturally.
Okay.
To find the cure and then make the cure. And
so there's like a time pressure. So the task itself is not incredibly challenging.
No,
but the time pressure makes you need to be on the ball.
Yeah, well, yes. There's not exactly a time pressure. I guess my coworker Audrey came up with the idea and then I implemented it in it. We took inspiration from Resident Evil 2, Mr. X, that slow moving, plotting creature that's always moving towards you. There's a very clearly an infected cell that is, evil. And if it runs into you, it will destroy your sub. And it's constantly slowly moving after you. The way I coded it, because I don't know if, you know what? Maybe I'll make a build and put it in the show notes or something. See if I can do that. But the way I coded it, and if you want to play it beforehand, skip this part, is like it increases in speed the further away it is from you because like it always needs to feel like a threat.
Yeah.
And so I made it move faster when it's farther away from you when you're moving away from it, so that it will always be close or get closer to you really quickly.
Right. This is like a Mario Kart rubber banding.
Yeah, basically, but for horror. And so so there's that aspect of it. But in the meantime, there are all these different regular cells. They all look like, all of the cells don't look like blood cells. They're all like creepy looking things. But there's one cell in particular that is the infected one that looks like all the other ones, but like behaves and moves differently. If that thing touches you before you find it, it will also destroy your sub. But it looks like everything else. So like you're constantly like you have to stand still and scan each of the cells individually to determine which cell is the good cell. Meanwhile, or the bad cell. Meanwhile, the blackened, evil looking cell is constantly chasing after you, and the infected cell is also constantly chasing after you, but you can't tell which one it is. So it makes it feel. So my goal was to make the game feel like a claustrophobic, but also like a paranoia sort of thing where like you constantly can't you don't know if this cell you're about to bump into is a good cell or a bad cell or not.
Right.
Things like that. And that's where I had a hard time playing and testing it because like I made it random, so I don't know which one it is. I can tell which one it is, but like I don't know, it moved really creepy and stuff, so I didn't want to touch it. Yeah, so that's what I was trying to. That's what I was doing. I'll see if I can make a build and put it in the show notes.
Yeah, that's an effective execution of all the things you were talking about. It seems like it is anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to play it. It's a horror game.
Fair enough. I did want to talk about like, I guess counter to this topic is like what being scared does to me anyways, and why I don't like it.
Yeah.
Cause like, I don't know. I generally speaking, when like a game has some form of horror element, I find much less enjoyment from it because like I cannot stand being scared. It just I don't know how to describe the feeling. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess like a lot of people when they watch a horror movie or something like that, it feels like a thrill ride, right?
Right. It's the roller coaster idea. It's like being scared and then the relief that comes from it. It gives you a sort of a high.
Yeah.
In a sense. But if there's too much of a fright and not enough relief, then that high isn't worth it.
Yeah. I think part of my issue is I don't have a very high tolerance for that kind of stuff. So I get scared very easily.
Yeah.
And so I guess probably regular horror elements probably scare me to a point where I just do not enjoy it at all. I think that might be an aspect of it. But with roller coasters, like I don't find them to be scary. I find them to be thrilling.
Right.
And maybe it's just like that aspect of it. I understand enough of how roller coasters work where I feel safe enough where I can take it and still feel a little bit of scare.
That sits under your thresholds.
Yeah.
But it rises to it in a way that works for you.
Yeah, I suppose.
So yeah, it's not just that scary things are more, that it's just certain types of things, right? You have a sort of a horror profile that is not all inclusive, but broadly inclusive.
Yeah. So that I think that's something. But I also want to talk about like y'all's experiences with scary things and how do you feel about it.
So why don't each of us?
Why don't each of us like horror things?
Yeah.
I don't. There's a lot of things that I don't like to play because I also don't like feeling scared. So like, and I find horror elements, quote unquote, in a lot of things that other people would be like, what? Like Dylan finds it hilarious. Because I found horror elements in like Princess Bride and things like that. But I mean, there are certain games that I haven't been able to finish because they get too scary. Like Firewatch there's like early on in the game, there's like you're going up this path and there's like this shadow that crosses the path of somebody, and then you find this is very early in the game, so not very much spoilery, but all your stuff is wrecked. And so someone's been in your space and you saw them and now they're somewhere and you don't know where they are. And that just freaked me out. And I was like, okay, I'm putting this game down.
That's interesting because I think even like one of the earliest trailers was just that scene where you learn someone's been in your stuff. And it's meant to be this sort of like mystery hook that is a little scary. And so it's interesting that what they used to sell the game was immediately your checkout point.
Yeah. It's like, okay. I think, and Myst kind of scared me a little bit too when I was a kid because I think it's that alone feeling where you are dealing with an unknown thing that you can't, or like in Myst's case, like there's no one ever in these places. And then sometimes there is a person and that can be freaky.
Or some animation or reaction you weren't expecting. Riven, I think, does more of that because it was capable of doing more of that.
Yeah.
So I think I was much more cautious just walking through the world of Riven.
At the end of Exile, I won't spoil it, but I had to just say, hey, Dad, tell me what happened.
Yeah.
Show me the good ending. But yeah, so that's kind of the thing. But I also like sometimes that can be okay. Like there's some scary stuff in 2064. But because you're with other characters when that happens, it's a little bit like I was like, I want to know what happens now. You know, not like, oh, I need to put this game down.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. I sort of know what you're talking about, but I don't really feel that same way. And the same with you, Stephen. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm scared of things. Like, but I don't know. Like, it just doesn't appeal to me. Like roller coasters aren't interesting to me. Like I don't ever enjoy them. Like I'm sure they are just as thrilling or adrenaline rising as other people. Like I'm not immune to fear.
Sure, yeah.
It just doesn't doesn't do anything for me. I think that's different probably from the reasons you guys don't like horror games or elements. Like the Batman Arkham games. Are action games. But they really have a lot of this sort of creepy horror like imagery. They do even have some jump scares.
Sure.
It's not a horror game. But it has a lot of that stuff. And I remember just being like rolling my eyes at all of that stuff. Like the atmospheric spookiness I couldn't buy into it. Okay. And I think that's just like a personality failing perhaps. But that's a big part of it is I'm really interested in systems. So like when I watch movies, I always am like checking to see like, did they shoot that on location or in a studio? And that does not ruin movies for me.
Yeah.
Like I'm able to have this separate idea of like me watching it and admiring its construction. And then me also perfectly suspending disbelief, even when I can see all the seams. Like that is how I enjoy most things. And like, I feel that I like to think that helps me as a creator design things.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe not. And video games are the same way. So horror games just there's no appeal to me. I don't understand them.
I suppose the design is also counter to what, because they tried to obscure all of that.
Yeah, and it's not, and you know, I don't have enough experience playing a lot of these, so it's, you know, there might be something about it I do like.
Yeah.
But you know, I played the original Resident Evil at a friend's house a couple of times, and like, I mean, it just seemed like a boring tank control game, and like the scares didn't, you know what I mean?
Well, like the aesthetics of most of horror games, I'm not even interested in either. Yeah. So like, I think there are some things that I might be able to put up with, but because they're wrapped in like gray zombie, like I hate zombies and like
zombies are walking gore things.
Yeah, I don't like gore. Yeah.
That might be more of my dislike because I'm very aesthetically sensitive. There are things I won't play, even if I know I'm going to like them, because I don't like the art style. Mm-hmm. So that might be more of it than I'm even willing to admit. That I don't like that aesthetic at all. It just seems silly, you know?
Doesn't seem silly to me. It just seems nasty. That's why I don't like the newer Mortal Kombats. Like I played the 9th one, but like I don't think I'm gonna play the other ones. They just got more and more grotesque.
Yeah,
in a way I don't like. Yeah. I don't know. I'm realizing now that like I completely abhor jump scares.
Yeah,
because like it's a sharp spike in it, which I'm not. I normally can see when they're coming, but like I just can't stand that.
Right. Right. I think the reaction you want, I'm just going to role play a little bit. It's like, huh. Yeah. Like that's what they want you to do, is to be like this like spike of fear.
Yeah.
Followed immediately by like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
And this sort of like almost giggle about it. I think that's what people want. I don't think a jump scare is meant to like rise up your level of fear and keep it there.
Yeah.
But without that giggle, like then
I find myself
what's enjoyable about it?
Yeah. When I find myself whenever I experience a jump scare, I get angry.
Right.
At the thing.
Right.
And
it's like someone just hit you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think, yeah. And like sometimes like, I don't know if like, when I used to live with my parents or something, I would, wake up in the middle of the night and my dad, he does not sleep.
And he was just standing there with an axe.
But yeah, like, when my, like I would just wake up in the middle of the night or something and I would go to the bathroom or whatever else. And then like I opened the door or whatever, and my dad was just not standing there staring at me, but he was just like walking down the hall or something, and I didn't expect him, so it would freak me out. And then I would get mad at my dad for just walking down the hall. Right. And like it's not his fault. He's just doing, just being a human. But like
that's a really interesting way of like the intent versus cause. So you had this expectation of an open, free space that belonged to you.
Yeah.
You knew where whatever you had an understanding of the world you were in at the moment. And then that unexpectedness like shocked you out of that.
Yes.
And that is essentially all that these structures are, is to either give you a sense of comfort and break it, or keep you in this sense of discomfort.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where you don't know the shape of the walls or how big the next room is.
Yeah.
Like it's not always about monsters. It's sometimes just about like not knowing if the ground you're standing on is solid.
Yeah.
Or thinking it is, but knowing it might not be in the next step.
Yeah. I tend to do a lot better with like psychological horrors. Better. I watched Get Out. And like, there's a few jump scares in that. There's like 2 or 3, but otherwise it's basically just like regular horror stuff, psychological horror stuff. And like I had a much better time with that. But then I went to see Us, and that has way more jump scares and creepiness.
Yeah,
people, threatening stabs and scary stuff, and I did not like that really. I had a much harder time with that. My eyes were closed most of the time when I was watching that movie. So yeah, I don't know.
Speaking of Jordan Peele properties, the latest Twilight Zone series, which he executive produced and is also the host of, filling in the Rod Serling suit. The final episode of the first season has an extended. There's a lot of meta stuff. I won't spoil it, but there's lots of running away from things and sort of like, oh no, it's all falling apart. Run into the next thing. It felt very much like a horror video game, and I was so bored of that episode because so much of its runtime was just that imagery, that sort of horror element, which is the episode itself is a bit of an homage to the Twilight Zone as a franchise, and it works in a lot of ways. But as a Twilight Zone fan, I forget that a lot of what Twilight Zone is good at is that sort of the sci-fi fantasy horror. Yeah, I sort of lop that off for my own memories. Yeah, but that's actually a big part of it, and seeing that, being confronted with that, and being bored by it, I was like, oh right, that is a big part of the Twilight Zone. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to check those out. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess, I don't know if this helps at all. Us talking about how we dislike horror. You can use that as a weapon to destroy us. We each have a different approach to why it doesn't work for us. Yeah. I would be interested, not that this would be feasible commercially, but I'd be interested to see designers try to take each of us as a challenge. Like, how do you make a game that actually works for the way we take on it? Because I think we all have a lot of appreciation for the mechanics and the intent and the design. But we each have different reasons why very few, if any, of these things have ever worked on us. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that's just a case of like there's no helping us, or if there's actually something that could appeal to our specific takes on it.
Yeah.
There's probably not enough of each of us out in the world to make that viable. But I'd be curious to see what someone's attempt or just a discussion about making that work, because I don't know how a horror game could work for me. I have no concept of that.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I'm not the one to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, game devs, get on it. Dang.
And now that you're chilled and thrilled, it's now time for the Sports Zone.
Martha, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Are you going to be with us this whole segment?
Absolutely not. It'll be way too much work for your audio people. But I am here to introduce the topic. It's one of my favorites. I hope you all enjoy the Sports Zone. Take it away, Martha. Welcome to Sports Zone.
That's really nice of you to fill in for Martha.
Yeah, I know. She's a really busy schedule, so.
Yeah. She has a lot of yelling to do outside the clubhouse.
Exactly. Right? Costs a lot for all that theme music that constantly follows her around. So I have been playing Golf Story also recently. And so I wanted to talk about sports games because I have played some sports games and I have really liked them. And I wish there were more like the ones that I like, and less like Madden,
right,
etc. So I wanted to talk about designing a non-Madden cool sports game.
Am I going to have to stand up for all those people who like Madden?
I mean, really what I don't like is that most sports are like very dude centric, and I don't feel very included in that, because like in games where it's realistic sports people, you can't pick women, and because they're not like, there are hardly any women's sports games that that are popular enough for me to have seen.
Yeah, right, and that feels like just a simple fact, but it's so consequential.
Yeah,
and weird that no one's really interested in tackling it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a problem across the sports in general. Is that like women's teams can be doing way better than the men's teams, but they get half the money and half the airtime and like none of the
Like there'll always be a tension during the Olympics or when the U.S. makes the World Cup or something. But it's just those moments.
It's funny, because we have that issue here in Minnesota. Like, our Timberwolves team is notoriously bad. Horrendously so. I mean, I've gone to some of these games. I mean...
And for those that don't know, that's the NBA male team.
Yes, right. That is our male team. But our Lynx team, our female basketball team, has won like I think they're 3-time championship winners.
Yeah.
Now in a row, I think, something like that.
I hear about it once a year on Twitter.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. You hear it once.
Yeah.
But we still, talk about the Timberwolves and things like that. I don't know. That is a good point then, Martha.
Yeah. So basically what I'm talking about is sports games that are untethered from real life sports.
Sure.
So there's like different ways you can approach making a sports game. You can make it like multiplayer, so you're actually playing against other people, or you can make it that you're just always playing against an AI. And then what I see is kind of a division between games that are based entirely on the physics of the actual things you're playing with, and then the games that are basically just random number generators that you set off after you decide to play, and then you see what happens. So like examples of that are like the Backyard Sports games, which is one of my favorite, very, very favorite games. It's a humongous game, of course. But like, side story about that, it's sad that those games, when the Humongous got sold to other companies, those got split off into their own things because they had started putting NBA and all the different types of players in there. So they got sold to a different company and they aren't putting them out again, which is very annoying. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So in those games, you would like, you'd say, okay, if I'm playing Backyard Baseball, I'm going to try a line drive and then like the only choice you get is like when you click to try to hit the ball. Mm-hmm. And then after that, the ball goes and you get to run and you can decide if you're going to keep running to a base or whatever. But that's basically your only decision while the other players go and grab the ball and throw it and stuff like that. Whereas like a game like regular human basketball, for example, or Rocket League, where you're like real time playing against other players and the ball is actually going in a direction that's realistic from like you're controlling it more.
Yeah.
Right. It's a simulation space.
Yeah.
Actual real physics.
Then there's like different types of controls you can go for. So you can go for regular games with your controller or keyboard, but then there's all these motion control games. Like there's a lot of Wii games that were, and Switch games now that do use motion control stuff, and VR games.
Yeah.
Right. And you guys were talking about some Wii games that were.
Yes, there was. Well, I guess it doesn't have motion controls. Did it have motion? It did have motion controls. Mario Strikers Charge did have motion controls.
Yeah.
That game was amazing. Love that game. Yeah, it was really cool. But I guess the motion controls aspect came in where like all of the Mario sports games have like super moves you can do. And what the super move is whenever you did this thing, you could like block by like moving the mouse, and you had to press the A button to block the balls or whatever, whether they're coming towards the goal. I think that like that was a really cool game. I don't know that it did anything other than that for unique controls, but like it was something.
Mm-hmm.
Did Mario Tennis have any?
The original Mario Tennis did.
Well, I mean, you mean motion controls?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know that there was a mainline Mario Tennis game on the Wii.
No, I don't think there was.
Oh, am I thinking of something else?
The newest tennis game does have like a secondary mode where you can use the
aces, but I don't think it was designed principally for that.
Yeah, it's a separate mode. It was not designed for that.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mario Tennis, the N64 version, that was something my friends and I all got together and played. And,
also great.
A couple of this is like the high school era when there's like 15 or 20 people in someone's basement.
Yeah,
like is that kind of a video game get together?
Yeah,
nice.
And I remember my friend Dorian and I we'd sit up at the little like bar in my friend's basement and we would do color commentary.
Ooh.
And we don't know anything about tennis. And of course, there's like fire flowers and stuff in Mario Tennis, so it was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. This is Mario Tennis is where I learned how the scoring system in tennis works, because the scoring system in tennis makes no sense to me otherwise. Like you go from 0 to 15 to 30 to 40, and then you go to love or something if you're tied, or it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
it's weird.
There's one of the most recent Monster Factories on Polygon is they make a character for a cricket game.
Oh,
and of course they didn't know how to do the rules at all. But I feel like, it's cool that you can learn real life sports rules through these games.
Yeah.
I played Sega NFL 96 on the Genesis.
Okay.
And that's everything I know about football comes from that experience.
It's that, like, I can talk to my aunt and uncle because I played backyard football, and I feel like, oh yeah, that's totally, wow, got to first down. Great.
So it's helping the rest of us fit into society.
Yes.
So Martha, you were talking about the two types of games, the sort of ones that are in simulation space and then the ones that are more like planning, sort of the choosing your play or whatever. Like, do you have a preference?
Well, I wish I was better at ones that had real physics.
Yeah.
Really simulated physics. Like Rocket League is a game you play a car soccer, and man, that game is gorgeous and it looks so much fun. But I am so bad at it that just becomes so frustrating.
Yeah.
Where at least with the playmaking games, you have a little bit more, it's more strategic and less like Twitch, like getting your car in the right place at the right time or your player in the right place at the right time. So I have a better chance at those. So I like playing those better, but I like watching like other people play. Yeah. I wish I was better at simulation.
It is interesting. Like a lot of those games, like Rocket League is a sports game in that it simulates a type of sport,
right?
But it's also an esport game.
Yeah.
In that it is to play it, you need to have it's competitive in that sense. And that's not necessarily true of a game like Madden, although EA is like spends a lot of money holding on tournaments, but I think that's more just promotional events.
No, I mean, there are some serious Madden players.
I mean,
I mean, serious.
Air quotes, yeah. I mean, this isn't fair, but but compared to something like a MOBA or Rocket League even, it's not quite the same.
Oh, yeah.
Because that game was not designed necessarily for that purpose. It can be played that way, sure. Mm-hmm. But I find that sort of interesting, like the types of games that have physics systems. What's to stop them from becoming an esport and being inaccessible to the rest of us? Like there's a line. I think Rocket League just steps over that line, you know?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, that's true. I mean, at the very least, they don't ever change the cars. And every car is supposed to have its own, like the same hitbox as all the other ones. So it doesn't matter which one you play, quote unquote. I mean, there's ones that people have found like the edge case where that's better. Right. So they all play the whatever. But like, at least it's not like, okay, I have to relearn how to play this game every time because they don't really change very much.
Less meta.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing that differentiates, I feel like, esports from regular sports is esports games get patched all the time, especially nowadays. Like even if we're including fighting games in esports, I'm still on that hill. Even fighting games like back in the day, they did not get patched that much. So like Melee is still the same Melee that you used to play. But like the newest Super Smash Brothers gets patched like regularly every couple of months or so.
Right.
League of Legends gets patched like every 2 weeks. I know that Rocket League increases in content, but like the actual game does not, like, they don't patch that. They don't really change anything.
I mean, they patch it probably for things, but because they add a lot of cosmetic stuff that probably has to be make sure it doesn't actually affect anything.
Right, but they don't have like changes that make the car move 10% faster or anything like that.
I don't not that I know about.
Okay.
Right.
It seems pretty static. Like if they do make a change, it will affect every car. It won't be like, oh, we boosted this car to be better.
Right. It won't change the rankings between two different loadouts.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. Yeah. Because there should be no difference. So your goal is to get better at there's like meta in that, like, okay, this is the best strategy for getting when the ball goes over here to, get it back over here. And there's techniques that you need to learn how to do.
Yeah.
But it's less like, oh, well, now you didn't know that this item is now better than this item. So therefore you lose, not because you are any worse at the game than you were 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Right. And ultimately, because there are fewer dimensions of entropy, there's actually less balance adjustments that need to be made at all.
Yeah.
Right.
That's very true. Yeah. I do know that like sports does change over time. Like they do like patch, quote, quote, that game sometimes. Like, for example, with basketball, they didn't used to have a shot clock timer.
Mm-hmm.
But there was this team whose strategy was to just like score and then keep the ball away from their opponents as long as possible so they can keep the advantage. And then eventually they added the shot clock timer because everybody found that play to be boring. So, I mean, those are aspects of it. There's some aspects of patching, I guess, in sports that happen sometimes.
Yeah, so, I'm sure that happens.
And it's interesting because, like, when we talk about sports games that are not a version of a real sport, which is really like what we're saying, that's what we want out of a sports game, is more interesting and creative. But then we don't necessarily, at least for the purposes of this category, we don't want them to just be esports.
Yeah.
Right. And so there needs to be this middle ground between an esport and a party game. Right. And that middle ground is like, there's not really a definition. It just sits there for many reasons because it doesn't do one thing or another, doesn't pull this lever or that lever. Mm-hmm. And like thinking like regular human basketball, which is highly competitive, but also lots of randomization. It's very difficult to have a fully sense of the physics system. So it's hard to manipulate. So it's not worth all the effort to like be able to control it because the other player can just by luck do better.
Right.
You still have to be good at that game to score and win. So that fits in the middle, I think. It's not quite a party game, but not quite an esport either.
Game,
I don't know. I feel like it's more of a party game than in the middle, to be honest. Because like those kinds of physics games like that, where like they're like awkward to control and it's fun and like I get that they're not. Those don't appeal to me that much.
Well, see that's the thing. If you can get good at it.
Yeah, you totally can. Yeah. You can get good at Gang Beasts and stuff like that too. But like just the way that everything feels, it doesn't feel like it wants me to get good at it. It feels like it feels like it wants to be a silly, funny game. And that's fine.
And maybe that's part of what keeps it from becoming an esport is being a little bit more inaccessible to mastery, right? And then that is a benefit.
Yeah,
it, right.
But does it make it a sports game?
I don't know. I mean, wherever you draw those lines, it's up to you, I guess.
Yeah.
I think sometimes party games can capture the feelings that sports give. Like when we make Clawbreaker, it was a fighting game, party game, but like I found the strategies that I had to use for that very similar to, it felt like I was fencing, like back at high school or whatever. So like you can evoke the sports feelings in a party game.
Right. I guess it just means like sports are just games, right?
That's true.
They literally are.
They literally are.
Yeah.
So one thing that I really like in sports games is like having lots of different, like if it's humans playing the game, lots of different characters.
Yeah.
Like in the Backyard Sports games, they had this whole cast of characters and they were kids from all different backgrounds. You could play a kid in a wheelchair and he was actually really good at all the stuff. And in Golf Story, all the people around in the world are so quirky and interesting. And of course, this is like a lot of games that I like, but having like outside story things within the game to discover really draw me in. So like building out the world that your sports game is in can help draw players in who might not necessarily pick a sports game as their first thing.
Yeah.
And like having like silly costumes you can have your characters wear, or like giving them unique walkout music for when they come onto the field or whatever. In the Backyard games, there are color commentators that are like AI. Like they just make general statements about what's happening on the field.
Yeah.
And they're super.
Look at that hustle. Like,
yeah, exactly. The player has reached the first yard line or whatever.
Or react to specific triggers. And stuff like that. Yeah.
And I think that's super, super fun. And like a single player game would be really fun to have those sort of things to build out the world that you're playing in. And then I like in games when there's like different modes that you can play in. So like in the Backyard Sports games, you could either play a pickup game or play in a tournament where you had like a bracket and you played multiple games against different teams. And in Golf Story, it's like that too, where you have like, you can go play the whole course in a certain map, but you can also do all these little challenges around that are, teaching you different mechanics for how to hit the ball, but also like doing like weird story things in the world. And then in like, there's also like silly modes that are just fun. Like in Rocket League, there's like the hockey mode where you're suddenly playing hockey and everything's like slippery.
Yeah.
And or like you could make a mode where it's like, oh, the ball is suddenly made out of rubber instead of,
Right. Like apply the rules you've set up and then just one twist that changes everything.
Yeah.
Right.
I also want to talk about some of the games that I would like to make if I got access to these IPs. It would be really cool to make a game that's kind of like Kelvin Ball, like
where you make up the rules on the fly.
Yeah. Well, it would be like you would either take turns making up a rule, so like the next round would then have to have everyone hop on one foot or whatever.
Isn't the conceit of Calvin Ball that there are rules but no one knows them?
Yeah, and you can't play it the same way twice.
Okay. Because I would definitely like a game like that where part of the play is deciphering what's a legal move.
Yeah.
Spend most of your time in the penalty box trying to figure it out.
Yeah. So, and it would be cool to make it so that like in the comic book, there's also strips where they're like, oh, this zone is like, you have to pretend you're swimming, or this zone you have to do like move in this certain way, and be fun to like be able to draw on your field or map or whatever, like different zones and things like that. It would be cool to have, it would be like a mini sports game engine sort of.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. Basically just Backyard the video game.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It would be hard to make, but I think it would be cool.
Like a common twist on these games are golf games, right? Because it's such a simple idea. Just hit a thing into another thing. Like it's just a you aim and there's a target.
Yeah.
But then there's so much you can change, but still keep that core element.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Golf Story's one. What the Golf is another really great one. And it still feels like a sport.
There was this one game my brother played that was a golf game, but like it was more like a puzzle game than the golf game, really, where like you do the traditional golf things, but like you have cards, and each time you use the card, the ball will move in that distance. Yeah. So like you try to get the ball into the hole.
So it abstracts the actual rules of golf with another set of rules.
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
That reminds me, we haven't talked about it. Punch Out is that?
yeah.
Punch Out's a rhythm game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not really a boxing game, but it's the setting is boxing. And so that's an interesting genre that like it's a sports game by virtue of its narrative or styling, not by virtue of its gameplay.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like Mario Tennis Aces is a fighting game. It's not really a tennis game. That's what I keep telling people.
Fight me.
Nobody believes me. Yeah. Like things like that. I don't know. I don't. What other games would you make?
So there's this book called Summerland. I think I've talked about it on the podcast before. But it's about baseball.
Is that Michael Chabon?
Yeah. And it's baseball, but
I have to interrupt you. Did you hear the news? Michael Chabon, Pulitzer Prize winning author, is showrunning the Star Trek Picard series.
Whoa, what? Whoa, really?
Yeah.
Is this real or are you pulling my leg?
No, it's a real thing.
Oh my God.
He wrote one of the short episodes that aired last year, and now he's going to be the showrunner for Star Trek Picard.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm here for this.
I've loved. He's one of my favorite authors of all time. A huge fan of his. I have a poster of the Adventures of Cavalier and Clay next to a poster of Star Trek Generations in my office. And to hear that now that they're together.
It's fate.
Yeah. So sorry, I had to interrupt the show for that.
But anyway, that's awesome. So we wrote this book called Summerland, which is about baseball, but it's about baseball if like all these magical creatures were also playing baseball and you had to go on this epic adventure to save the world through baseball. I would make a game like that.
Like a baseball story?
Yeah.
Be
like Golf Story, but more fantastical. Yeah. Like if you were playing baseball with giants, or if you were playing baseball with, shape-shifting things that could, whatever.
Yeah.
All to save the world from destruction.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like at the end of the day, a lot of sports, I'm talking about like Madden and things like that. A lot of those games are like basically like real-time strategy games. Especially like FIFA. FIFA's really popular.
Yeah, they've become like RPGs as well. Like a lot of that stuff takes them away really from sports gameplay and more games with sports.
Well, I mean, a lot of them are more like management games than like sports games, I guess.
Yeah.
Like you oftentimes take up the role of like the person who is managing all the players on the field and things like that. And so it feels more like a real-time strategy game. I mean, it's a real-time strategy game. I guess that's designed for like controllers and things like that. It's not like StarCraft, but
right.
Yeah, but yeah, it's more like a real-time strategy game, I guess, in that way. And it's interesting that like if you bring it outside of the digital world, it no longer like retains a lot of that quality. It's not a real-time strategy game because like you can't control all the people. They're humans. They do their own things.
A fact you regularly lament.
Yes. No. But like, yeah, if you strip it from the digital aspect of it, it becomes a completely different thing.
Yeah.
Which is really fascinating, I suppose.
Well, it's this notion of abstracting.
Yeah. Right.
Which is important to gameplay design.
Yeah.
You don't want to simulate something exactly because then you're just doing that. And what's the point? You want to abstract things so it feels real.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that appeal to you as a designer or as a player? The RTS elements, like those extra.
I don't like real-time strategy games at all. No, they're too complicated. Yeah.
So it's like your two worst, like two things you don't like coming.
Well, not all sports games are like real-time strategy games, I guess.
Yeah.
So but.
Well, what would you make? What would appeal to you?
That's a good question. I guess if I were to watch a sport, it is a boxing game.
Yeah.
Or boxing. So I would make a boxing game, fighting game.
You can't just,
I win.
can't make all your games fighting games.
But can't I though? I don't know what I would make otherwise. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I can't think of any games from like other media that like would be really cool to put into a video game realm.
Well, it's tough because, you know, as we've sort of talked with it, like defining what a sports air quotes game is, it's a fuzzy definition. So when you say like, what would I do with my dream sports game?
Yeah.
Like, you know, Martha had time to prepare and so she has answers, right, but it's sort of hard to like say, well, isn't that just a game? Like, or it's like, oh, I want to make a game that's soccer and looks like real soccer, but has these other gameplay elements. Like, well, what is that then? Like, I don't know. So it's hard to where you would think like, what's your ideal fighting game? You have all the things from other fighting games you can bring into it and make your sort of perfect mashup without having to, you know, just thinking off the top of your head.
Yeah.
But or a platformer, like all the things of all the platformers I've ever played.
Right.
Like, what do I like and what would I try to put in?
Right. Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't hold up to your eventual like scrutiny when you try to work on it. At least you can come up with something. I think a sports game is a little harder because of that fuzzy definition.
I mean, also, again, we're not super experienced with sports games. So,
well, that's a big part of
it.
Yeah, I can imagine like a new fighting game, but like I would have a hard time with sports games because I just do not play a lot of sports or watch sports that often.
And ultimately, too, like if we're talking about the world of real sports as like a starting place, there aren't actually that many of them. Like there are many, many sports, but compared to like ideas for other types of games, you sort of, there's a lot of more constraints that you have to choose first, I guess, which makes it harder to imagine.
I mean, the Olympics is adding more and more different things to be sports. So it could be like a skiing game or like, on Itch, there is a curling game now, which I meant to play before this episode, but haven't yet. But it looks really cool. You play a walrus and stuff like that. Anyway.
That's really cool. You play a walrus.
That's great, Well, I've talked about it on the show before. I think curling is a game I love. And I don't see it so much as a sport, but that's because I like it, I guess. But what appeals to me, and if I were to design a game that I would call a sports game or try to convince people that's what it was, is like a game like curling where there's equality in play. So all this like RTS elements or things like equipping a team or things that are common to esports. I think I wouldn't put any of that in a sports game I would make. I love competitive games where everyone's given the exact same tool set. Yeah. Because then it requires some skill, but also requires some strategy, but doesn't require a ton of knowledge. Sure. And I think there's a little balance that I just love for all types of competitive games. And I think a sports like coat of paint on that would work pretty well. I think. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds cool. I think I have an actual answer to the question.
Oh.
I think I would make something that is more like a decathlon, but maybe it would be like with random actions instead of like you always have to run. I don't know. It could be make tea or something. It would be like WarioWare, but for sports.
Okay.
I think. Yeah. I don't know. That seems like a really interesting idea.
Yeah.
And then like if you made it competitive and you had to compete against other people, you'd have to get good at like all the individual sports.
Yeah.
And then like maybe you could like develop a team where like this person's really good at the hockey aspect of it, but this other person's really good at the equestrian part or something. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. That would be kind of neat.
So they'd be like mini games?
There'd be a bunch of mini games. Yeah.
Okay.
Enough depth for like there's some
strategy.
complexity and strategy.
Yeah.
In it,
so if you do it more, if you practice, you get better.
Yeah. But not enough depth where like a player can just dominate because like they're really good at this one thing. Like maybe you need some kind of a team because they all use different aspects of people's skills and things. And you just have to build your team and you don't know what sports you'll get.
That is the end of the Sports Zone. Please file out of the stadium in single file and don't push each other. Nice games. Sports. All right. Take it away, Mark.
That is our show. If you haven't already, subscribe to Nice Games Club in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to give it a good review if you liked it, or a nice like us, or don't want Mortho to come after you. We need to know you're out there, so leave a review and tell all your friends too. We also want to hear directly from you, so follow us on Twitter and all the other things at Nice Games Club, and email us at contact@nicegames.club. Lastly, you can find out more about the show and your nice host, as well as get all the links and show notes from this and other episodes at nicegames.club. And so, until we start again, remember to
play nice
and make nice.